Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that gracious introduction, and thank you to all of you. It's a delight to be with you and an honor. The Acton Institute and the Acton University have such a prominent place in the fight for liberty, and to see this many people availing themselves of this terrific resource, the work of Chris and Father Sirico, this is an inspiration to us in Washington, D.C. I can assure you that in Washington, we're watching this. We're noticing that here in Grand Rapids, we have the next generation of great ideas, notwithstanding whether you're young or old. In point of fact, you are the future of the free enterprise movement, and we share your sentiments and your values with you at AEI. I'm the president of the American Enterprise Institute, an institution dedicated to the same things that you are, to the idea that maximizing liberty, increasing individual opportunity, and fighting for free enterprise give the most people the best life. We've been doing our work since 1938. Happily, we've been doing our work. Some of the most distinguished scholars in this area are known to you, and I see out here my great friend Michael Novak, a man who literally changed the way I see the world because of his understanding of both culture and freedom. I know you heard from him last night. So thank you again. Thank you again for inviting me here to be with you tonight and spend a few moments talking about what I see as the battle, what I see as the struggle facing our country and our world today. Now, I would love to start off by saying, as the president of the American Enterprise Institute, we're winning the fight for free enterprise. We're knocking down every barrier. Nothing can stand in our way. But I can't say that. And the reason I can't say that is because it's not true. We're refighting fights that we should have won generations ago, that we thought we won generations ago. We thought that Reagan won some of these fights. As the years have gone by, we realize that the wolf of statism is still at the door. And we're relitigating the same arguments that we've had year after year. The last 3.5 years have been so many steps backward in the fight for liberty. So the question is this: what's going wrong? What are we doing wrong? I want to tell you what I think is going wrong tonight. And in a nutshell, it's this. Look, we all know that free enterprise is the greatest system in the history of the world for creating great wealth and prosperity. Everybody knows that. Liberals know that. Conservatives know that. Moderates know that. We've got all the words to show that's true, but we're missing the music. And when we miss the music, when we fail to say what's written on our hearts about why we want to live in the greatest, freest, strongest nation in the history of the world, and to give this gift to the rest of the world, many of you are from outside the United States, and you know exactly what I mean. When we fail to say that, which is written on our hearts, we lose the debate. Now, I want to make my point about what's wrong with the free enterprise movement by telling you a story about 3 friends. These 3 friends have been playing golf every Saturday morning for 15 years. It's the highlight of their week. They have a special dispensation from their wives to go away every Saturday morning and play a little golf. One is a psychologist, one's a priest, and one's a free market economist, just like me. Now, one Saturday morning, a beautiful Saturday morning, sunny, breezy in May, just like this coming Saturday, you'll see. They get out on the golf course first thing in the morning, they can't wait, and immediately they get stuck behind the slowest twosome they've ever met. These guys are 4-putting every green. It takes them 5 minutes to select a club, even though they have a caddy, so it should be going faster. It's very frustrating. 3 holes go by, and they start to make remarks, just loud enough to hear. The priest says, "I pray I'll never be stuck behind a twosome this slow ever again." Things like that. Another couple of holes go by, nothing. Finally, they decide this has got to stop. They march up to the caddy and they say, "Listen, this is going slower than any golf game ever. You got to let us play through. This just isn't right." The caddy says, "Sure, of course you can play through. But do you know how rude you've been with your comments? Do you know who these guys are?" The 3 friends say, "No, who are these guys?" He says, "Well, do you remember last year when the town orphanage burned down?" So, "Yeah." "Do you remember the 2 firefighters who pulled out all the orphans, but in the process, they lost their sight in the blaze?" The three friends say, "You're kidding me. It's not," the caddy says, "Yeah, it is. It's the heroes. It's the firefighters. Golf was their passion. It's all they have left. Obviously, it goes a little more slowly now, but maybe a little respect." Now, the three friends are mortified. They say, the psychologist, he says, "I've dedicated my life to helping people, and this is a little ironic, I have to say. I'm going to take this as an important lesson." The priest, he says, "I have a contrite heart, and I thank the Lord for that." The free market economist, he thinks about it for a minute, and he says, "It would be more economically efficient if they played at night." My friends, that's us. All true, but not winning any hearts with these data. I'd like to submit to you a paradox about government today that summarizes the problem at hand. If you ask Americans if they believe the free enterprise system is best for America, 70% say yes, in spite of the recession. 70% right now say the free enterprise system is the best system for America's economy, hands down. If you ask them about the role of government, the same percentage. 70% say the government's too big and the government's trying to do too much. Now, this is great. That means 7 out of 10 Americans love free enterprise and want limited government. The Acton Institute, the American Enterprise Institute, are winning. Not so fast. My institute in 1938 was founded based on a complaint, a rebellion against a single offensive fact, which is in that year, the American GDP was being occupied to the tune of 15% by the government. The government was soaking up 15% of America's GDP. To that I can say, bring back the good old days. Because today it's 36%. Now, some of you are not from the United States. You'll be shocked to learn that the government is soaking up as much of American GDP as is the Spanish government soaking up Spanish GDP. People often ask me, are we becoming a European-style social democracy? I say, no, we already are a European-style social democracy if you look at the data. The Congressional Budget Office, the government itself, in other words, estimates that in the year 2038, the government will spend 50% of American GDP. That's what they're projecting they're going to do. That's not free enterprise. That's barely free at all. Americans are going to work from January 1st through June 30th to pay for a government they don't especially like. Something's got to change. Now, first of all, let's find an explanation for this paradox. Conservatives and free market advocates like us, we better be able to explain what's going on, because every time we say, Americans love free enterprise, somebody throws that in our face. Yeah, well, how come 77% say we shouldn't reform Social Security? How come 64% say the government should give everybody their health care for free? These things are true. What's the explanation? There are three explanations. There's a liberal explanation, there's a conservative explanation, and there's a correct explanation. So I'm going to give you all three. The liberal explanation is basically this. Americans don't love free enterprise. They just say they do. They say they like lots of things. They say they like the 50s. They say they like I Love Lucy. They say they love free enterprise, but they don't. They want a European-style welfare state. They want cradle-to-grave care. They want it all taken care of, and they're not going to be happy till they get it. That's what liberals think. If you read the New York Times, which I don't recommend, that's what they think. Conservatives say, no, that's not right. Americans do love free enterprise, but they haven't seen the light with adequately granular data, enough good PowerPoint charts, and enough numbers that show the truth about fiscal consolidation. Balanced budgets are beautiful, and Americans just haven't seen how beautiful with enough detail. So we can get all the data in front of them, just ram the charts down Americans' throats. Finally, the light bulb will go off. Ding! And they'll say, I see it now. We need the free enterprise system. Now, that's not right either. How do I know that's not right? I'm the president of the American Enterprise Institute. And if that were right, my job would be done. Father Sirico and I would be out looking for a different kind of career, perhaps. But we're not, because that's not correct. The truth of the matter is, we have a paradox in which people say they love free enterprise but act as if they didn't. And the reason is because we have failed to make the moral case for the system that we love. The moral case, not the materialistic case. We're stuck making material arguments about economic efficiency, about GDP growth, about tax reform, when what people want to know is how our policies are better for affecting people's lives. And we're failing to make these arguments. Now, I need to prove to you that only a moral argument will do. And the way I'm going to do that is by telling you about how I figured this out by personal experience. And then I'm going to give you information about what we're finding in the big new world of brain science, and then take you inside some human subject experiments. And by the end, I'm going to have you convinced, I hope, that only the moral case will win this fight. So how did I figure this out? How did I start thinking about this? And it goes something like this. I am the only conservative in my family. I am from a liberal family of academics and artists in Seattle, Washington. And so Thanksgiving for me is super fun. The way it works is we all sit around the table, and at some point the conversation turns to politics and economics, and they look to me because it's my turn to defend capitalism. Same thing every year. And it goes something like this. They say, hey, you know, what about this financial crisis? Doesn't look so great for your precious free enterprise system, does it? And I say, hold on. It's not the free enterprise system that's to blame, quite the contrary. Government housing policy melted down the mortgage market, and then crony capitalism metastasized the whole problem onto Wall Street, necessitating all kinds of phony bailouts. The only thing that's going to solve this crisis is true free enterprise. It's empowering entrepreneurs. It's getting out of their way. It's lowering regulations. It's lowering taxes. Because did you know that we have the highest corporate tax rate in the OECD countries? And I'm feeling pretty good about this argument because, you know, I run a think tank. So the data are all great, right? And nobody's really shaking their heads in agreement. And then my sister-in-law, she says, you know, what I think, she's really left-wing. God bless her. And she says, you know what I think? I think you just want to give tax breaks to millionaires. And you know what else? I just read in the paper about a little girl who lives in a car with her mother. What's your free enterprise system going to do for her? And I just lost the debate. I just lost. And you know what? I deserve to lose. Why? Because I get 10 seconds to frame myself, and so do you. When you're with people who kind of know you but not so much, or even people who know you pretty well, you get 10 seconds to tell them what you're all about. And I used my 10 seconds to tell everybody that what I care about is money. And my sister-in-law, man, all she had was platitudes and weak anecdotes, but she used her 10 seconds to say that what she cared about was people. Now, people matter more than money. Newsflash, you know? When you have a PhD in economics, you sometimes doubt that. But it's true. It's true. We all know that. We love people. We don't love money. We care about people. We don't care about money. We only care about money to the extent that it helps people, yet we keep framing ourselves as the ones who care about money more than people. And that's why we're losing. We're getting the frame wrong. We're getting the 10 seconds wrong. Now, there's been a bunch of recent brain science that talks about the fact that the moral case for people beats the material case for money. And it involves an amazing part of your brain called the medial prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain right behind your forehead. So here's a prominent exhibit of a medial prefrontal cortex in front of you right now. The medial prefrontal cortex does amazing modern things. It allows you to make material judgments, executive decisions, but it also processes moral judgments using the same cognitive circuitry. Imagine this. The same part of your brain does all kinds of things all day long. You're driving to work. You're deciding how to get there. The fastest way, you have several routes. You make a split-second decision to go left instead of right because of traffic patterns in front of you. That's an executive decision, and that's your medial prefrontal cortex at work. You get to work. The guy in the next office says, hey, do you like my tie? And you have to make a decision. Do I tell him the truth, Or do I make them feel good? That's a moral judgment, and it's the same circuitry. So here's the question. When you are presented with a moral judgment and an executive decision in the same instant, which will dominate? Which will own that real estate inside your head? The answer is the moral case. Now, we know that for a fact based on wonderful research from a social psychologist at the University of Virginia by the name of Jonathan Haidt. If this name sounds familiar to some of you, it's because he wrote a big bestseller this spring that was called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Disagree on Politics and Religion. Jonathan Haidt shows that the moral case beats the material case, and the moral case will utterly dominate the imagination and consciousness. It will occupy the medial prefrontal cortex to the exclusion of everything else through a series of fantastic experiments using human subjects in the laboratory. He brings in a group of people and he tells them a little story. And I'm going to tell you one of his stories right now. I'm going to make you a promise. If you don't remember anything I talk about tonight a year from now, you're going to remember this story. I'm about to occupy your medial prefrontal cortex. And if you don't like it, it's not my story. So there's a family. It's a family just like mine. I'm going to give you a little bit of background. My wife Esther and I have 3 kids. They're 9, 12, and 14. And just like my family, the family in this story is in conflict all the time about something. In this case, this family is sort of at war internally about whether or not to get a dog. The kids want to get a dog, but mom and dad are implacably hostile to the idea. The kids say, it's not fair that we don't get a dog. The neighbors have one, everybody's got a dog, how come we can't get one? And mom and dad say, because you kids are too irresponsible. We know who's going to take care of that thing. You know, you kids are going to forget about it after 2 weeks. It's the same every time. Until you kids learn some responsibility, no dog. Now, this goes back and forth until inevitably what always happens, happens. The kids win over mom, and there's a coalition against dad. Right? And so he caves in. Fine, let's get a dog. They go down to the pound. They pick out a puppy, and they name her Muffin. And they bring her home. Turns out Dad was wrong. Muffin's a great dog. You know who loves Muffin the most? Dad. You know why? Because when Dad gets home from work, nobody else is happy to see him. Yeah. You know, this is something that's brought the family together better than anything has in a long time. Muffin is in all the Christmas pictures. A couple of happy years go by until one summer, warm August afternoon, the youngest child, who's now 11, accidentally leaves the front door open, and Muffin sees a squirrel out on the lawn. Goes running out after the squirrel, runs into the street without looking, boom, hit by a car, killed in front of the whole family. The kids are screaming. Mom is crying. Dad is crying a little. He loved Muffin the most. And the kids say, Dad, what do we do? And so Dad goes out and picks up Muffin's lifeless body, and together they bring her into the house lovingly and decide as a family to cook her and eat her. That's your medial prefrontal cortex at work, my friends. Now, I could hit you with a whole bunch of executive decisions and materialistic arguments. I could say, what's wrong with that? It's a good, high-quality protein source. You know, it doesn't hurt the dog is dead. It's their dog, it's legal. In some countries, they eat dogs. And you're still saying, that's idiotic. You're not supposed to eat your dog. I don't need to give you a reason why not. Half an hour from now, you still can't give me a reason, but you're still going to know it's wrong. And the longer I try to convince you it's okay, the more you're going to think I'm some sort of weirdo, right? It's not okay to eat your dog. And that's a moral judgment that we're wired as humans to make. That's what I happened onto on Thanksgiving Day with my family. I was talking about money, and my sister-in-law was dominating the medial prefrontal cortex of everybody sitting around the table because all they could see was the face of the little girl living in the car with her mother. That's all they could see. All they could see was the people involved in that thing. And that's all they should have seen was that little girl. That's what we're wired to see. So what do? How do we make a moral case? Because the only way we're going to win this thing, the only way, is to say in my 10 seconds, in my argument, I'm going to start off by making another moral case, a better moral case, a more compelling moral case. I'm going to have to say why I care about that little girl too, and why what I want to do is going to help that little girl. And it's not just about stories, it's about really getting the job done. It's really about lifting up the least of these. If I can't do it, I'm going to lose. So what do I say? To start on that, we need to go back to the founders. Now, when I talk about the founders, I mean the American founders. What did they write? Were they materialists? Of course not. They were moralists. They were deep moralists. The covenant they made with us was well put in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, which those of you who are Americans know by heart, that we're endowed with our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, they could have said life, liberty, and the pursuit of great riches and wealth. They could have said what was the original wording in that document, which was life, liberty, and the possession of property. But they didn't. They talked about the pursuit of happiness, understanding that only the pursuit of happiness was a sufficiently moral cause to provoke, to elicit struggle, maybe even death, for nothing more than the idea of the freest, strongest, greatest country in the history of the world. Only a moral case would do. They knew it, and they'd be scandalized that today we make the case in terms of money. What are you doing? They'd say. We promised life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and you're talking about everybody's right to have convenient and well-priced electrodomestic appliances? What's the matter with you people today? It's about a moral thing. Now, to be fair, sometimes we remember the moral case. Sometimes in the free enterprise movement, we get the moral case, and every time we do, we win. And let me remind you of one case in American public policy where we did that. And that's the case of welfare reform. When I was a kid growing up in Seattle, we were pretty poor. A lot of people in my neighborhood were on welfare. We weren't. My dad taught during the year and drove a bus during the summer. He wasn't a big hero, but he knew a fundamental truth that everybody knew in the day, which is that welfare screwed up the lives of poor people themselves. We looked at our neighbors, the ones that were on public assistance. Dad was coming and going. The kids were taking drugs. The Chevy was up on blocks in the front yard. You know, we had neighbors 2 houses down that were raising chickens in their living room, which I thought was normal at the time. Turns out it's not. My wife and I tried it in Bethesda, Maryland. Bad idea, right? So what happened? My dad was saying it's bad for the poor, but politicians were saying it's just nothing more than a colossal waste of money, and nothing happened. Nothing reformed that system until ideas came along. Ideas from scholars at think tanks. I want to tell you about two. One of them is with us here tonight. His name is Michael Novak. Another is Charles Murray. Both of them are scholars at the American Enterprise Institute. And they observed a very subversive thing. They noticed in their writings, independently and together, that the problem with the welfare system was not that it was a colossal waste of money, although it was. The real problem was that it was hurting the people it was supposed to help, and that's immoral. Look, if there's one thing you know in life, it's don't hurt poor people. If you don't know that, you were raised by wolves. Everybody knows not to hurt the poor. Everybody except the government, that is. And that's why welfare reform was necessary. Now, as soon as Michael and Charles wrote their work about welfare reform, a fuse was lit in this country, a moral fuse, and it was only a matter of time before that system went down. That system, as we knew it, was going to change. It took a long time. As a matter of fact, every policy inflection for moral reasons takes a long time, at least 10 years. Anytime somebody tells you that the current crisis in free enterprise is going to get solved in one election year, they're lying to you because they want your money. Don't believe it. It's going to take 10 years. 10 years of fighting by leaders. That's you. It's me. 10 years of our dedication to the cause of liberty fighting year in and year out. 2013, we better have as much energy as we have in 2012, or the other guys are going to win. They're waiting for our energy to go away. It didn't go away in the case of welfare reform. The moral case was just, and it was consistent with the data, and it went forward in 12 years after the idea of welfare reform was posed. Legislation was signed into law by a Democratic president, because by that time, it was something that everybody on the street knew that welfare was bad for poor people and it had to change. That's what we need, is the moral case like that, and then we'll start to win. So here's the question. What is it that our founders meant by the pursuit of happiness? What was this profound moral covenant they were making with us? What does the pursuit of happiness mean, and how can we share it with more people? We know it doesn't mean the pursuit of money. We know it. They didn't say that. And as a matter of fact, there are good studies by economists showing that money doesn't buy happiness, but you don't even need those studies because your mother taught you that too. Money doesn't buy happiness. I discovered this in my own research in a pretty interesting way that I think does tell us what they meant when I was doing work on happiness. I wrote a book on happiness in 2008. And over the course of those studies, I looked at who's happy around the world, who's happy in America, and who's not happy, and I looked at the differences between their lives. And I found some pretty interesting things, I have to say. The difference between men and women, the difference between religious and secular people, the difference between people who have children and people who don't. All of those things are pretty interesting, but there was one big thing in there that was more interesting and useful to me than any other fact. And that was the unhappiest average age in a man's life. It turns out there's a distinct unhappiest age in a man's life. Women don't have it. Women are generally happier than men all throughout their lives, and they don't fluctuate very much. Women do better. They do better in everything. They're happier, they're more stable, they don't rob liquor stores. Men, on the other hand, don't do so well. And they have a distinct unhappiest age in their lives. Now, it's not every guy, of course, but this is on average in America today. So what is that age? And I've independently verified this, redoing the best data analysis myself. So I know this to be true. What is the average unhappiest age in a man's life? What do you think? Call out an age. Like people saying 50s, people saying 40. What's the average of those two? 45. Very good. This is a math crowd. 45 is the average unhappiest age in a man's life. It's true. So how come? What's going on at age 45? How many guys here are under 45? You're on your way down. I, on the other hand, am on my way up. It's all good from here until the end. So what's going on at age 45? If you ask social psychologists, they give you family explanations. They say things like, that's when your wife figures out definitively that you're boring. Or you have a teenager at home, which is misery. But it turns out that those are not the most compelling explanations if you look at the data. Economists have the real explanation. Economists know what's going on, and it goes something like this. When men are in their 20s and 30s, their success and their money track together, and they're cruising down this superhighway of life. Neon signs with dollar signs on them. The better they do, the more they make. Life is good. But at some point, generally around the age of 45, a lot of guys say, I think I missed my exit. Someplace back there, but I can't turn around anymore. And the reason I can't turn around is because of the mortgage and the school tuition, and my life is so expensive. I hate being a lawyer, but I need the money. They say, but what was off that exit? They wonder, was it being a poet? What was it? Turns out we know what's off that little exit. What's down that little unmarked road. We know what they craved. We know what you want. It's called earned success. Earned success is the belief that you've created value with your life and value in the lives of other people. And it's not denominated in dollars necessarily. That's just one measure. I've studied social entrepreneurs my whole career. I wrote a textbook called Social Entrepreneurship at one point, and I worked with dozens, hundreds of social entrepreneurs. These are people who denominated their success not in dollars, but in souls saved, in great works of art, in kids not going to bed hungry, bringing up wonderful children, social entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter. Commercial, social, cultural, financial, religious entrepreneurs, it's all the same. They earn their success. And earned success is the elixir of happiness. If you take two people who are precisely equal in all ways, same age, race, religion, same region of residence, even the same level of education, and they both feel that they have earned their success, but one earns 8 times as much money as the second, they will be equally happy about their lives. Here's the fundamental truth. You can spread around money until the cows come home. You won't get a happiness difference. You can't spread around earned success. Only you can earn your success, and only entrepreneurs can help bring it to you. And this is a fundamental truth of public policy. The government spreads around money all day long, promising to make people happier, and they hate it. They hate it because they want earned success, and they're not getting it. Only the private sector, only entrepreneurship, only initiative and personal responsibility can bring the thing that we all crave. And this explains the paradox of government. We keep asking the government for more and more and more stuff, and they promise us it will make us happier. And then when we get it, we're unsatisfied, and we hate it and them because we're not getting the thing that we crave. On the contrary, we're getting the opposite. The opposite is something called learned helplessness. Now, that didn't originate with me or my colleagues at AEI. That came from an eminent social psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania named Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman in the late 1960s and early 70s was doing experiments on humans and even on animals, and he noticed a funny thing, that when he detached merit and reward, when he gave people things they didn't earn, and when he penalized people for things that they didn't actually do, 3 things happened. They became passive, they gave up, and they became depressed. Sounds kind of like real life, doesn't it, in public policy? When you get things you didn't earn, when you have things taken away from you by force that you did earn, you give up. You become passive. You become less happy. Learned helplessness is the opposite of earned success, and it is exactly what the welfare state brings us. That is the reason, in a nutshell, my friends, that free enterprise, the only system that matches skills with passions, that allows people to keep the rewards that they have earned, that celebrates entrepreneurship and personal responsibility and consequently brings earned success, that's the reason that free enterprise is not an economic alternative. It's a moral imperative, and it's what we need to share with other people if we want to give them the best life. It is the first moral promise of the free enterprise system. Now, if you're like me, you might be thinking at this point, sure, earned success is great. Everybody wants it. But does everybody have access to it? What about the poor? What about the people who are born under unfortunate circumstances, without 2 parents, without good education, in a country that has improper nutrition? What about all those people who can't earn their success? Earned success is not a system through free enterprise that can help the poor, right? And you know what? That's not fair. We need to deal with 2 other issues about the morality of free enterprise. One is fairness, and the other is the poor. So let's do those 2 in turn, starting with fairness. If you listen to the President of the United States today, every 3rd word that comes out of his mouth is fairness. How come? Because he wants to make it the theme of 2012. What is he banking on? Every single one of you running in the other direction, throwing over your shoulder defenses of economic efficiency and hoping that they work. And he knows they won't. Just because they didn't work for me at Thanksgiving is exactly the same reason they're not going to work for Governor Romney in any debate. But he's counting on us all running away and losing the fairness argument by forfeit. So what should we do? The first thing that we should do is say, well, what's fairness? What does fairness actually mean? And to answer that question, let's think a little bit. Those of us who are Americans and those of us who came from immigrants ask ourselves this: why did our ancestors come to this country? Was it to get a fair system of forced income redistribution? Not so much. Not so much. You know, there are no letters from my grandparents at Ellis Island talking about looking for the best possible welfare system. No. They wanted to start a farm. They wanted to work hard. They wanted to earn their success. They wanted to be rewarded for their merit, and that's true fairness. You know, you can imagine a guy, in Vietnam saying, I want to go to America because there they have cash for clunkers. But that's what the president is arguing. The president is arguing that real fairness is redistribution. Real fairness is spreading the wealth. If you listen very carefully, you'll notice that every case of fairness is one in which he's asserting that the entrepreneurial class and people who have more are not paying their fair share because they have more than the poor. They have more than people who have less. That's his definition of unfairness, is economic inequality. How do we deal with that? Well, let's deal with that first by looking at the research. There's a wonderful series of experiments by economists. They're called ultimatum games, and they work like this. You come into a room, and the researcher gives you $10. You sit down, and somebody else comes in on the other side of the table, and you have to decide how much of the $10 to offer to the person on the other side. Now, if he accepts your offer, you both get to keep the money. If he rejects your offer, you both walk out with zero. Now, lots and lots of times this game has been played, and you figure, well, offer the guy across the table a penny. It's better than nothing, right? Of course not. He'll reject it every time. Why? Because it's not fair. You didn't earn that $10, and so the only thing that's fair is relative equality. That's how the president sees our economy today. There's a bunch of people with money who didn't earn it, and so who therefore owe it to the people on the other side of the table. That's how ultimatum games generally work. So I have a friend who changed the ultimatum game. He made the participants in the experiment earn the $10. Now, how do you make undergraduate students at a university earn $10? The way he did it is by making them sing in front of all the other students. He said, sing, and I'll give you $10. And these guys would get up there. It was very funny. These guys would get up there, and they would, it's horrible. 18 years old. The bear went over the mountain, the bear went over the... It's mortifying. How do I know? Because I just did it. And it's... And he'd give them $10. Now, how did the experiment turn out differently? They offered virtually nothing to the people on the other side of the table because it was theirs. They earned it. But here's where it got weirder. The people on the other side of the table never rejected because they knew it wasn't theirs. Because they knew the other guy had earned it. He got up there and sang, the bear went over the mountain, for Pete's sake. He earned that money, right? If you earn it, you don't feel somebody has a claim on it, and the other person doesn't feel that they have a claim on it either. Here's the central argument about fairness in America today. One side thinks America didn't earn it. The other side thinks America did earn it. Which side are you on? Now, I got the data on this. 89% of Americans believe that fairness is not redistribution. They believe it's rewarding merit and creating opportunity. It's the bear went over the mountain people. That's who we are, 89%. And so here's the problem. When we lose by forfeit, we should be saying, Mr. President, the problem is you just defined fairness wrong. I and 89% of Americans believe that true fairness is rewarding hard work and merit and personal responsibility and innovation. And it also means penalizing free riding and laziness and corruption and greed and stupidity. That's true fairness. When you call fairness redistribution, you know what we get? We get people stealing from their children, and that's unfair. We get public sector unions that get better pay and benefits than their private sector counterparts. That's unfair. You get crony capitalists with certain bailouts and tax loopholes and carve-outs that private sector entrepreneurs who don't have access to government don't get, and that's unfair. Mr. President, you've created the most unfair country in my lifetime because you define fairness wrong. I demand a truly fair country. That's what we should be saying. But what about the poor? Because they're still with us. And we treat people with fairness by letting them be rewarded for when we let Americans and people around the world be rewarded for their merit, some people are going to end up with less. Some people are going to end up poor. What about them? What are we going to do? We still haven't answered the case of the little girl in the car with her mother. How do we deal with that? Does free enterprise really help her or only help the rich? The answer is, it doesn't just help the poor. It's the only system to help the poor, and I have proof. If you go back to 1970 and look at today, and you compare the two dates, you will find that the worst poverty in the world, that is to say, the percentage of the world's population living on $1 a day or less has decreased by 80%. 80%. I know you didn't know that because nobody knows that, and it's probably the greatest accomplishment in human history. It has never happened before. We still have too much poverty. We do, in this country and all around, and I believe you probably join me in feeling commanded to lift up the poor, and we have to do more. But an 80% reduction in the world's worst poverty, why is that? What's the explanation? Is it the fabulous success of the United Nations since 1970? Is it U.S. foreign aid? Of course not. It's globalization. It's free trade. It's cross-border entrepreneurship. It's property rights. It's rule of law. In short, it's free enterprise. It's you. It's you and your businesses and your consumption activities. You are the reason that today somebody will not bury his child who died of starvation. That's all about you. Truly, free enterprise is your gift to the world. If you want to lift up the poor, if you join me in being commanded to treat the least of these in a way that lifts them up, you must understand that a good Samaritan can only lift up the poor by the billions with one system only. That is the free enterprise system. It is the third moral promise of the system that we love, and probably the greatest accomplishment that it has ever created and ever will, is what it does to the poor. So where are we? Here's your frame. You talk about the dignity of every individual to earn their success and to design their life, including that little girl. You talk about true fairness, where people don't have what they've earned taken away, and you don't make people dependent on a government by giving them things that they don't earn, because that's not fair. And you talk about a system that truly can provide relief and provide it honestly and dependably. And the only system that can do all those three things is the free enterprise system. That is the moral claim that we have to make. These are the arguments that we must make. This is the only way to win. But more than that, this is the only way for us to say what's written on our hearts and to say what truly is what we think. And being honest matters a lot. We need to fight for this together. I congratulate you on the fact that you're here with the great Acton Institute to do exactly that. What you're learning these days is how to fight for these ideas. You're learning from a master, from Father Sirico, whose great new book is a handbook on how to make the moral case for capitalism. Please read it. Please learn from it. And get ready to win these arguments and to win the hearts of all the people that are around you. For what you're doing for our country and for our world by being here, for sharing these ideas, for winning more hearts, and for saving more lives through the free enterprise system, God bless you, and thank you.
Wow, thank you, Arthur. That really struck close to home. Not only did I just turn 45, but I was reflecting, I think I am unhappy because I've been hoodwinked into not one, but two dogs of late. So anyway, we have a few minutes. I know Arthur has to go to Lansing tonight for another event tomorrow morning. So he will sign books. We're going to be selling his books, and he'll be signing them afterwards. So we'll have a short Q&A, and then we'll move to that. So there are microphones in the room. If you would raise your hand, someone will come to you for the questions.
Sure. And this is the first hand over there. Well done. We'll bring the mic. And so since it's a large space, we'll have AEI rules on mic, which is to say, please stand up and tell me who you are and where you're from, and state your protest statement in the form of a question.
Josh Good with Christians for a Sustainable Economy.
Hi, Josh.
Just wondering if you might make a comment as well, sir, about You've given us a moral argument tonight, appealed to our hearts, spoken emotionally with clear, rational facts in mind. Just wondering, with an audience like this one, are there also biblical arguments, religiously helpful arguments in a Judeo-Christian setting that are useful for this argument?
Sure, absolutely. And I've had plenty of debates on these particular topics because I am a Christian, and I take it seriously. And I read I'm a Roman Catholic, which is to say that I subcontract out my Bible reading to professionals. But I'm sorry about that, Father. But there's a lot for us to find in the Holy Scriptures about this. And let me give you just one example, because obviously we could go on and in the scriptural vein for a long time. But let me give you one example of a debate that I've had with a major Christian evangelical leader named Jim Wallace, whom I have debated 4 times in approximately the past 18 months. And Jim Wallace and I have debated what it means to be a Matthew 25 Christian. I've actually alluded to Matthew 25 already. That's what you did to the least of these, you did unto me. What does that mean, you did unto me? Now, we can debate back and forth, whether or not that means that we need a very, very strong welfare state, and to what extent that means that we need relief, and whether or not we need a welfare state that reaches all the way up to sharing across the income spectrum, or whether that means we need more of a private sector. But what I want to call your attention to is that which you did to the least of these, you did unto me, comes in the second half of the 25th chapter of Matthew. Let's think about the first half, which is the parable of the talents. The parable of the talents reminds us that we are called scripturally, we are called spiritually, to be good stewards of God's resources, and even as prosaic as invest them properly for all the things that means. And it's very, very hard to find a justification for a strong social democratic system when we're talking about the first half of the 25th chapter of Matthew, I dare say. That's been the deal breaker, I think, in the debates that we've had on this particular subject. There are so many parts of the Bible that we can interpret in so many ways. I leave it to your consciences, those of you who are Christians like I am, to read these things in a faithful way. Not in a self-interested way, not in a political way, but what you think is a faithful way to do what's written on your hearts for the least of these, and indeed for everyone. Thank you for the question. Let's go to here, and then we'll go right back here. Yes, sir. We'll wait for we've got a microphone winding its way through.
Yeah, my name's Peter. I'm from...
Sorry, somebody jumped in the queue. We'll come up here right after that. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my name's Peter Brom. I'm from St. Paul. I just wondered if you could expand a little bit more on the connection between globalization and the reduction of poverty.
Sorry, say again?
Can you expand a little bit more on the causation between the
globalization
and the reduction of poverty in the
Sure,
last 30
absolutely.
years?
Let me do it by way of a case study. What's the connection causally between globalization and the reduction of poverty? Since 1980, one country is responsible for 75% of the reduction in world poverty. One country alone. The People's Republic of China. Hugely problematic country if you believe in religious liberty, like we all do. Hugely. Totalitarian regime, terrible, misogynistic, one-party state that has a one-child policy. So much wrong with it, but it's done something right since 1980. It's called free trade and opening up to a global environment. Massively opened itself up to global free trade starting in 1980. And since 1980, trade with the United States alone has increased by 1,000%. The stuff that you buy, that maybe you need and maybe you don't, is the difference between somebody seeing their child going to bed hungry or not in China. It has literally lifted 600 million Chinese out of poverty. When you go to China and you talk to them about what they would have been doing in the 70s and what they are doing today, the difference is between some kind of a middle class, normalized life, or abject starvation level poverty. It's causal, and it's global, and it's moral. Can we come up right up here? Yep. To the front, thanks.
Right up here.
In the front row.
My name is Thomas Smith. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. And my question that I have for you, listening to what you're saying, what you said today is right on. But as a conservative from the black community, and say I wanted to reach out to you as a mentor to learn, what I've ran into before dealing with people is that I would get told that, well, we need to find someone who's maybe from your community doing these sort of things. Well, how do we overcome that mentality and just reach out to people as Americans, those of us who are hungry to learn, instead of being framed like the liberals try to do and say, well, you need to get stuck in this group so we can reach you this way. How do we overcome that?
Yeah. I appreciate the question. It's a very tough problem. And those of you who are not Americans, you see the crisis that we have in this country where we're considered to, just because of the way that we look, we're considered to necessarily think in a particular way. It's not right. It's actually un-American. Because in point of fact, each of us is an individual. That's why we are endowed by our Creator with individual rights. We believe these are natural rights that we should be thought of as individuals, and you should be able to think for yourself. And that's exactly the case that we need to make. We must stand up for our ability to design our lives and to think for ourselves. We need to protest this and protest this more. This is something that we have it's a paradigm we have to destroy at the highest levels, because it's not just liberals who are doing this. This is conservatives who are doing this too, and they're doing us a great disservice. Every time you see it, every time I see it, we have a moral obligation to call it out, and this is the only way it's going to get solved. It's better than it was. Look, it's better than it was. We've made progress, but we haven't made enough progress. Thank you for your courage for standing up to this problem. Let's see, right here in the middle table. And then I'll go over to this side. I haven't been looking at this side. I apologize for that. So we're going to go over here next.
Andy LaValle from Boston. You mentioned Father Murray's book. You look back 1960, we hold these truths, and you look at the most number one TV show then was Father Knows Best. How do we fight the media battle these days?
Yeah, well, we fight the media battle by getting into the media battle. You know, it's been for the longest time we forfeited that one too. We said, look, you know, people, this will take care of itself. The truth will out. No, it won't. No, it won't. We got to be in there fighting. We got to be in there fighting all the time. Now, that's gotten a little bit better because, I mean, the internet has been a gift to conservatives, largely because they can't keep a monopoly when you have alternatives. And so that's helped really a lot, but we still have to fight. This has been the biggest challenge that I've had as president of the American Enterprise Institute. The think tank industry has traditionally been all about the supply side of information. It's the field of dreams approach. Build it and they will come. Have great ideas and people will come to you and say, that's a wonderful idea. Let's use that idea. No, they won't. You got to take it to them. The biggest area of expansion that we've had at AEI has been in communications, outreach, and education. We've poured millions and millions of our donors' dollars into reaching Americans, proactively identifying leaders, policymakers, people in media, people in business, academics, college students, community leaders. These are the 6 groups of leaders. We're identifying them and going out to find them. One of the most exciting programs that we have is called Values and Capitalism. Greg Lane is here. Greg Lane from AEI is here, who works in our Values and Capitalism project. That project is designed to get on dozens and dozens of campuses, and this is the reason that we have these debates between me and Jim Wallace that basically says we're going to pound these ideas into the space in the places where people live. Incidentally, we're looking for a program officer in that. Any of you who are on the market and ready to get in the fight at AEI, let's see your resumes. Dan Rothschild is here. Where's Dan? Dan Rothschild left. So Dan Rothschild is over there. Dan Rothschild is our director of coalitions. He's talking to 1,000 state and local groups around the country that we're going to serve. These are organizations that are on the front lines fighting hand to hand for the ideas of liberty, and we have to run guns to them. Ideologically and in terms of ideas. Don't get the wrong impression, right? You're getting the wrong impression here, right? We're still a 501c3 organization, and it's a... But look, you know, AEI exists in our ecosystem so we can run ideas to the people that can really use them in the fights. Dan Rothschild is the guy who's doing that. He's linking us up with the organization that can use our ideas. We're all about this because we have to go where the fight is. Right here.
Hey there, I'm Serenity Richardson. I'm a college student at the King's College, and I don't know if you've heard or not, but we have just moved to the financial district in New York City, and in preparation for that, I wanted to see if you had any tips, maybe like a 10-second soundbite for moral arguments, not only for free markets, but corporations to present to Occupy Wall Street fans, because I'm sure I'll run into a few of those, and I'd like to be able to reach out to them. So
Absolutely,
any
you want to be
tips
ready.
there?
That's great. The King's College is the only college that's moved to Wall Street from the Empire State Building. It's a very interesting place. What do you say to the Occupy guys? Corporations aren't people. Corporations are stealing from this country. What do you say about corporate cronyism? And the answer is you condemn it. It's wrong. It's the parallel threat to liberty. Look, there are two reasons that our free enterprise system is on the rocks. One is statism, and the other is corporate cronyism, and they're illegitimate spouses of each other. Corporate cronyism exists, I should say illegitimate, unmarried spouses, common law spouses of each other. I'm really attenuating the metaphor, but sorry. The corporate cronyism only exists because of statism, because there's a trough to feed at, basically. But that's still, the fact remains. Look, there were malfeasance and greed and abuse in the financial crisis. All kinds of major corporations that were trying to get special carve-outs and bailouts, and they got them from the government. And just because we believe in free enterprise, just because we celebrate entrepreneurship, and just because we believe in business as a legitimate thing to do. I mean, Michael Novak, my colleague, wrote a famous book called Business as a Calling. It is a calling because we believe morally in the vocational nature of our work. That doesn't mean it's okay to cheat people and act unfairly. And there was lots of cheating and lots of unfair dealing, and we got to call it out. And let me tell you, when you go to the Occupy Wall Street gang and you say, yeah, I'm a conservative, you know what? You're right. There was malfeasance and greed and corporate cronyism. What you're wrong about is the cause. It wasn't that we had too much free enterprise, it's that we didn't have enough free enterprise. Then you're going to be able to start making, you're going to have the right argument, you're going to start making some progress, because you're not going to be attacking them on the basis of their protest. You're going to join them on the basis of their protest and try to expand their consciousness as to the root. I've done it before, and believe it or not, it kind of works, because they understand that your heart's in the right place. Good luck. Good luck. Oh, we got a ton of people back. Look, we got 2 arms in the air back here, so all the way back. By virtue of enthusiasm, we're going to the back corner.
Father Michael Butler from Cleveland, Ohio. I didn't have a question. It was just Occupy Up Twinkles from the Peanut Gallery.
All right, where are we going next here? Okay, we've got actually we're waving a handkerchief. So that's a good sign too. Yes,
You
ma'am.
asked for enthusiasm. I
love
thought I would offer a little
absolutely.
bit. My name is Joy Moore, and I'm from Durham, North Carolina. And I'd like to hear your elevator speech to address. I appreciated what you had to say. I am in need of a response for those who I would describe not as immigrants, but those who had their birthright stolen. And how do I speak to persons, particularly in the African American community, who have longed to pull themselves up by a bootstrap, but have had that denied. And unless we address that, I can't talk. That's why Jim Wallace has an audience there.
Yep, I understand. I know why he's got an audience, and if we don't have anything to say about this, we just lose. So what do we say? Look, one approach is equalize everything, like the president's talking about. But you know what? He's wasting your time. He's wasting your time because basically he's saying America is like an apartment building, and the people in the penthouse, they're living the life. And the people in the basement, they're seeing it flood, and the elevator doesn't work. So what's the president trying to do? He's talking about income inequality. All he's doing is throwing rocks at the top floor, and he's not trying to fix the elevator. What we shouldn't be talking about is income inequality. What we should be talking about is mobility. That's what we're all about. If we want to create a true opportunity society, and certain people have been denied opportunity in our society, which is unambiguously true, then we have to talk not about trying to bring people down, but rather to lift people up. And our president isn't doing it. He's wasting our time because he doesn't want to do the hard thing. It's easy to tax people more and spread it around and saying we got more equality by bringing people down. It's much harder to lift people up and give them true opportunity. How do you do it? You do it all the ways that the president finds distasteful and noxious. There are 3 solutions. Number 1, schools that exist for kids, not grown-ups. We have a civil rights crisis in this country. Public education is a disaster area. Not for my kids. My kids are off the grid. My kids go to Catholic schools. It's for the poorest kids in this country. You know, Washington, D.C., where we spend more money per kid than any other place in the United States, we're throwing money down the rat hole. We're not helping the people in the bottom 20% of the income distribution. We're not, because we have actually quadrupled our public spending per kid over the past 40 years, and we have nothing to show for it. This is simply going into the pockets of bureaucrats and unions, and it's a scandal, and it's got to stop. No wonder he's not talking about it. Number 2, entrepreneurship. What are we doing to get out of the way of poor people who want to lift themselves up? Answer is nothing. We're getting in their way. We're hurting them more. It's getting more and more complicated to be an entrepreneur. You know, my ancestors were in the bottom 20% of the income distribution, and they were entrepreneurs, and they were able to start a business and a farm. You know, today, forget about it. It's so complicated what the government has done, disproportionately hurting the poor, that people in the bottom 20% of the income distribution can't figure out how to fill out their taxes. Many don't even know that they qualify for the earned income tax credit because it's a thicket of regulations and taxes and laws and the kind of society that really is only designed for the top 20%, not the bottom 20%. If you think they can't figure out their taxes, how are they going to start a business? And the answer is they're not. And that's not right in an entrepreneurial country. And number 3 is we're not talking about culture because we don't want to. We don't want to talk about culture. It's very inconvenient. Here's the deal. There are 4 institutions that predict the success and happiness of people. Father Sirico's written about it. Michael Novak's written about it. Charles Murray's written about it. A bunch of you have written about it too. The 4 institutions of meaning and success in our lives are faith, family, community, and work. Every policy that we've got in America, in the American social democratic system today, is weakening those institutions, and it's weakening those institutions in the lives of the poor. This is the most anti-poor government we could possibly construct. It's as if we were electing presidents and Congresses who hated poor people. I mean, if you basically set out to say, you know what I'm going to do to get the bottom 20%, I'm really going to mess up their lives. You do exactly what we're doing. Bureaucratized, ineffective schools, systems that people can't break into because they're too complicated unless you have lawyers and accountants, and no discussion whatsoever about the most important thing of all, which is the healthy culture. That's what we're doing. We want to lift people up. It's time to start having that discussion, frankly. And then we can maybe start to make some progress. Good luck, and God bless you. Let's see. We're going to make strategic decisions because we've got these mics, and they're getting their cardio as they run around the room. So let's stay on this side a little bit.
This is fun. Hi, Whitney Snowden, Cedarville University. My question is, this Thanksgiving, when you have your 15 seconds to defend your entire moral argument to your family or to your sister, what from your book, what 15 seconds are you going to use?
I want to help that little girl. I want to help her too. She needs 2 things. She needs relief and she needs opportunity. We're destroying our economy, and we're not going to fulfill our promise to give her relief, and we're going to make sure that she never has one single opportunity in this life, and there's nothing moral about that. That is reprehensible, and it can't stand. The current system is against that little girl, making sure she's never relieved and never has a life. That's where I'll start. Now, they know I care about the little girl, then I'll start doing some details on how that's so. Look, I mean, they've heard me do this at this point, and they'll just go, yeah. But at least, I'm not just about the money. At least I care about her. At least I care about the things that they care about too, and that's the basis of progress. That's the basis of actually winning some people who might be persuadable to understanding that we have a better way. Yes, sir.
Mr. Brooks, I was a recipient of public health care as a child. I grew up crippled. And of course, I had opportunity in a family and faith that surrounded us. But what do we say in this current debate about people having a right to health care and making health care affordable for some of the people that I pastor who are no longer, who have been unemployed due to the recession that we've had in the Metro Detroit area, cannot afford health insurance right now?
Right. A lot of people can't afford health insurance right now, not because of free enterprise, because of a lack of free enterprise. The truth of the matter is that healthcare markets are all messed up because the political process has made it impossible for the free enterprise system to create affordable healthcare solutions for people all around this country. And you know you have to thank for that and Obamacare, which stepped into the breach to basically try to make the first pass at socializing healthcare and give us a European-style system. We have the Republicans to thank for that. In 2005, every Republican in America knew that we needed insurance reform in this country. Why? Because too many people were without insurance, too many people had insurance connected to their jobs so they couldn't change jobs, too many people were without any sort of portability, too many people had pre-existing conditions, and too many people, quite frankly, were completely uninsurable. That's an insurance problem, not a health care problem per se. We have the greatest health care system in the history of the world. We have an insurance problem, and every Republican knew it, and they took a pass. When they took a pass, the Obama administration saw their opportunity and tried to start socializing the healthcare system. If you love Obamacare as much as I do, send a thank you note to your Republican congressman who did nothing in 2005. Now they're going to have a chance to fix it. How are they going to fix it? About 7 steps. If you're interested, go to aei.org. We've got the plan that's going to land on the next president's desk on the first day after his inauguration that says, here's how real free market insurance reform works so that we can truly protect the poor with an appropriate safety net, lower costs, and get better outcomes for everybody. Because it's possible, and it does not require socialism. One more. We got one more. And are both mics on this side? Well, you know what? So I'm turning it over to you. You have to make the decision. I know that's not good leadership.
It's okay, I'm used to being in charge.
Yeah. She's married, I see. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Marcel van Hatem. First of all, congratulations. It was really a wonderful lecture. I liked it a lot, as I think everyone here. I'm from Brazil. I studied 3 years ago here in Washington for half a year. I lived in the United States, and now I live in the Netherlands, where I'm doing a master's in political science. So, and you just mentioned about the 4 key words of success, and one of them is faith. And when I hear the debate here in the United States, it is very centered also on free enterprise. I see that it's not the same in Europe as the think tanks that exist there. And I would like to hear some comments about that, to elaborate a bit how this difference on faith, on religiosity, as I see now in Europe, impacts on that. Churches are empty. We see that many people, especially in the Netherlands, consider themselves atheists, more than 50% of the population, as well in Scandinavian countries. How does this impact in the level of success of a country and the happiness of people? Thank you.
Wonderful question, and one that I've thought about a lot. I've spent a good deal of my adult life living in Western Europe. My wife is from Spain. We got married in Spain. I actually went to Spain on the bet that I could get her to marry me, and we just are celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary, I'm happy to tell you. Thank you. But more to the point, she's the reason that I believe the things that I do about this country. When we immigrated to the United States, she had 4 job offers in her first month. She didn't speak any English. One of them was a job teaching English. You know? She said to me, "This is the greatest country in the world for people who want to work." Now that's a big deal, because she comes from a country with 52% youth unemployment. She comes from a country where 46% of adults under the age of 35 still live with their parents. She lives in a country that's in a death spiral, Look, Europe is becoming a theme park before our eyes. Why? Why? There are two reasons: statism and secularism. And there's no other way to describe the problem. If you want a vital, healthy society, you cannot base it on the idea that the state is all important over the individual, and you can't do it on secular beliefs. Why? Because there are some central truths. One of them is as you get past a certain level of prosperity, it will become not cost effective to have children. If you don't have beliefs that transcend your life, you won't have them anymore. I know that. It's an empirical regularity, as we economists say. It's happening all over the world. Incidentally, anybody who tells you that the 21st century belongs to China, they're wrong. And the reason they're wrong is demographics. It's because number one, they had a one-child policy. Number two, they started aborting baby girls, and so they have an imbalance. Number three is in the most educated, prosperous parts of the country, they voluntarily stopped having their babies. Now, that happened a long time ago in Spain and Italy. Spain is in the process over the next 35 years of losing 1/4 of its population. Now, what's going on? And the answer is there's just no reason to have kids anymore. There's just no reason. It's funny, I look around my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that exists that is behind an Opus Dei school that my kids go to, and so do most of the neighbors in my neighborhood. We have 3, and people look askance at us. They say, sorry about that. People across the street have 10, and they're pikers, right? I mean, in point of fact, when you have a society that does not belong to the government, and in which people dedicate themselves to a higher purpose, most notably to God, people will live on into the next generation. The future of a prosperous society depends on lots of things, but the fundamental currency of success of any society is people, is humans. When you stop having the humans, your life is limited, and your prosperity is doomed, and that's the problem. I hate to leave it on a depressing note, but as we leave it, remember, there's a solution to the problems that we face in this country and that you face in your countries if you're not from the United States. The solution is the power of ideas, motivated by your sense of morality. That's the source of every inflection in crises, every solution to problems that we've seen in the history of the world. That's the reason that the Acton University really matters. That's the reason that you really matter. Let's fight together, and we're going to see some real victories. Thank you.